In this lesson, we'll look at storage and retrieval of memory. Storage is the second step in the memory process. Once information is encoding and you take it in, then we put it in our storage centers, such as short-term memory and long-term memory. Our short-term memory are things that we are focused on, and our short-term memory is also referred to as our working memory. It's our conscious awareness. It's what we're processing. However, it is very limited in duration and capacity as well. Things remain in our short-term memory for about 20 to 30 seconds, and unless we find them important or use some strategy to put them in our long-term memory storage, they fade after that time period. And we can only retain about 7 to 9 bits of information. So I'd like you to take out a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to ask you a series of numbers just to show you how difficult it is to hold more than 7 to 10 bits of information in your short-term memory. All right, so I'm going to read a series of numbers, and at the end I'll say go, and then you write them down. See if you can retain them. We'll start at 5 and we'll go all the way up to 9, but you cannot start writing until I say go. All right, so the first set: 1, 7, 5, 3, 8, go. All right, the second set: 4, 2, 7, 6, 3, 1, go. The third set: 8, 1, 9, 7, 4, 2, 5, go. All right, so many of you will start dropping off now. We're going to moving into 8 numbers. 3, 7, 4, 5, 8, 1, 4, 7, go. So many of you could not do that. It's very difficult to retain 8 numbers. But some of you might be able to do it. Let's try 9. 8, 3, 1, 7, 2, 9, 6, 1, 3, go. All right, so that gives you an idea of how limited our short-term memory is. Again, we can only hold between 7 to 9 bits of information, some people even less. With that said, there are some known what they call super memorists, people who can retain everything that's ever happened to them in the past, and it's always there in their short-term memory, able to recall. Many of them have had to be institutionalized. Imagine every conversation, every argument, everything you've ever done is always there for retrieval. Typically, things fade and we forget. For them, they cannot. It's as if every past experience is just readily available to them. And they often keep a journal, and you can ask them, okay, what were you doing on February 2nd at 3 o'clock on 2003? And they can tell you. Again, there's just a select few, and it is quite a mystery as to how this occurs. I'm going to put a link to a video on the next slide. There's a man named Rajan Mahadevan, and he is one of those super memorists, and he knows over 99,000 digits of pi. Imagine that. And he can jump in anywhere in that sequence that you ask. His parents first discovered his ability when he was very young, and they had a dinner party. They were wealthy, and there was a valet outside. And as people came up and had their car parked, he was sitting in the window and was watching them. So he watched the cars arrive and he watched them leave. After the dinner party, he told his parents, I can tell you everyone who was at the dinner party when they arrived and when they left, but by their license plate. And he actually sat there and spouted off all of the license plates in order from arrival to when they left. And of course, they're thinking, yeah, that's cute. But they checked it out, and he was absolutely correct. Just phenomenal. So I have a link to that video about him on the next slide. So just take a minute and watch that. So your second storage facility is referred to as long-term memory, or LTM. And it is believed to be permanent and limitless. There are two types, which I'm going to explain in the upcoming slides. So the first type of long-term memory we call explicit memories. These memories are processed in the hippocampus. They involve, first of all, episodic memories. So these are episodes or events that have occurred in your life, such as a birthday party, your prom, eventually your wedding day. But they also include semantic memories. These are memories that involve facts, dates, and names. The second type of long-term memory are called implicit memory. Implicit memories are processed in the cerebellum. And if you recall from the chapter on neuroscience, the cerebellum helps control your voluntary movements. Okay, so implicit memories, first of all, include procedural memories. So these are memories for any procedure or skill that you've ever learned. So this could be like riding a bike, throwing a football, shooting a free throw, playing the piano, or buttoning your shirt. Okay, any procedure or skill that you've learned will be processed here in the cerebellum. The second type of long-term or implicit memory would be a conditioned memory. These are things that we've been conditioned through practice over and over and over again that we do unconsciously without thought. For example, when the bell rings at the end of your class period, you don't think about it. You don't say, wonder what that means. You just get up and you leave. Or you come to an intersection. You don't stand on the sidewalk thinking, okay, I know I'm supposed to do something. You just look both ways. So these are things that we've done over and over and over again, and you've just been conditioned, and you do unconsciously without thought. So a specific case that they talk about in the text is a man named Clive Waring. Clive Waring had encephalitis, which destroyed his hippocampus. And because your hippocampus stores your episodic memories and facts, dates, and names, so events in your life, facts, dates, and names, those are the things that were affected and that he could not remember. So it shows that here's a man who's lost many of his explicit memories due to the hippocampal damage. However, his cerebellum is completely intact. It was not damaged. So his memory for things that were conditioned and learned very well, and his skills that he has learned are still very much alive, and he can still perform those. He was a composer and played the piano. And although he doesn't remember that he could play the piano, he could still play beautifully. In the video that you're going to watch, you'll see he can't recall who people are and what happened yesterday. But his wife says, let's go and play the piano. And he says, I don't know how to play the piano. I never have. And she sits him down, and he just immediately starts playing. So this is a good example of the difference between the explicit and the implicit memory. When looking at memories, when they're stored in the brain, we would say that memories are malleable, and you cannot remove just one part of someone's brain and remove all of their memory. Because memories are processed through neural connections in different parts of the brain. Certain parts of the cortex, we store memories for smell. Certain memories that deal with emotion and fear are processed in the amygdala. And we already talked about the hippocampus and the cerebellum. And these different parts of the brain work together. So our memories are really scattered all throughout the brain, not just in those specific places that we mentioned. And it's because we have neural connections for each thing that we've learned, each memory that we've created. The next topic we're going to talk about is retrieval, which is the third step in the original memory model. Remember, encoding is getting information in, storage is putting it in your storage facilities, and retrieval is being able to get it out once it's been stored. So in order for us to look at two specific ways that we retrieve information, I'd like you to, somewhere on your paper, try and remember the names of the 7 dwarfs. So you can pause before you go on. After you write the names down that you remember, take a look at this list and see if you can complete yours if it was not finished. So that exercise showed you the difference between two retrieval techniques, recall and recognition. Recall just means pulling information out of thin air. So at first I asked you to recall the names of the 7 dwarfs, and that can be difficult. But then I gave you a list to identify from, and that is recognition. So many of you are probably able to complete your list if you didn't know all 7. And by the way, they were Sneezy, Doc, Dopey, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, and Bashful. Now, recall is like compared to a fill-in-the-blank test. When you're without a word bank, you're just pulling information out of thin air. Recognition is like a multiple choice. And we like that because sometimes just seeing the word will activate a neural connection that we've made in our brain when we were learning that item previously. So another way that we retrieve can sometimes be accidentally. It's referred to as a priming cue or retrieval cue. And just like recognition of a word, which is an example here, that triggers a neural connection activating some association that you've made in your brain and brings that information to the surface for easier recall and retrieval. It can involve any of your senses, basically. Sometimes I will see, looking at a visual cue, I'll see a new student in Mountain Ridge as a freshman, and I'll think to myself, oh, that's so-and-so's son or daughter, and immediately that'll trigger a past memory of their parent. So now that association, remembering their parents, becomes active, and I remember memories with them. Sometimes just certain smells. You smell something and you have a neural connection that you've made associating that smell with some past memory, and now that comes to the surface. Or perhaps you're driving down the road and you hear a song come on the radio from the past, and immediately a memory comes back to you because that is activating some past association that you've made between that song and some memory. So that is a priming or retrieval cue. And oftentimes that just happens by accident. It activates the association and brings it to your conscious awareness. And the last two are referred to as context clues. First of all, state-dependent memory. This is the idea that if something occurs when you're in a certain state of mind, then when you're in that similar state of mind, that memory will come back to you. So let's say if someone is under the influence of alcohol and they lose something in their apartment and they search for it for days and cannot find it, but the next time they're consuming alcohol, they end up finding that item. It comes back to them when they're in that similar state. So state dependent. Mood congruence, very similar. This is when something occurs and you're in a certain mood, and then you're in that same mood again. Those past examples come back. So let's say you're in an argument with someone, and you tend to forget that argument and forgive that person, but then you're in another argument, a few weeks later, and now that past argument comes back to you. So that is mood congruent.